Welcome to Innovative Thinking for Fast Changing Times. Hi, I'm Andi Simon. I'm your host, and I've put together a program to help you see, feel, and think in new ways. I'm a corporate anthropologist. That's my job. Usually, I'm helping organizations change. Now, everything's changing. And what this pandemic and the economic recession and all the civil unrest has created is a time for massive transformations. The only problem is people aren't well skilled in how to do that. And reskilling has become something that we must pay attention to. People are trying to figure out, how do I belong to something when I'm not in the office? They're worried about how to manage this blended life that's no longer blended. They're not quite sure what the new one is. And they really are anxious about what's coming next because, as you know, humans like to see the future so they can live today. And the past is not coming back, even if you hope it is. And so we are all dealing with our clients and with others who are trying to figure out, how do I create something new for changing times, which is why we've put together Innovative Thinking for Fast Changing Times. I brought with us today a woman who I just adore. She's a wonderful speaker, a consultant, a facilitator, and she's smiling, but she helps you do like I do, change. So let me tell you a little bit about Melissa Davies. I met her through Thought Leadership Leverage, a program that Peter Winnick had put together that I just think is a great place to meet thought leaders. I didn't know I was a thought leader, but now I'm enjoying meeting others, and our job is to help you think in new ways, which is exactly what we have to do today. Melissa is a masterful group facilitator and effective technical designer. She assists groups and organizations accelerate their planning process and develop collaborative teamwork, which is what we're going to talk about today, through shared leadership. And we're going to use these words carefully. Leadership and managing. What are we doing? How do we build together a new collaborative, a new model for it when we're not all in the same room? She's a career-long educator with over 2 decades of experience as a teacher, a facilitator, a trainer, and a speaker. Her leadership of learning teams brings significant depth to Wise Ways Consulting, a company she founded in December of 2007. This is all about how can she help you do what I love to do, see things through a fresh lens. And I do think that what we're hearing is that many leaders have become immobilized, the deer in the headlight. They feel victims. They're not quite sure how to lead, and everyone is looking at them as if they know where we're going. What we're finding is sometimes people who we thought would lead aren't, and others who'd never led are. Everything is changing. Melissa, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Andi. I really appreciate the opportunity. It's always great to have a conversation with you.
As you're seeing the world that we're in today, there are a couple of things that are standing out from your perspective and the work that you do. Let's start there, because I like to share people's stories about what you're seeing that really is important to help others then think about it in a new way. What are you seeing?
Well, people are hardwired for connection. So people are trying to find that way to stay connected, to stay engaged. And it's interesting because some of my more introverted friends are saying, oh my goodness, this was fabulous. But even they are trying to find ways to engage. And folks like myself who have more of an extroverted preference, we're looking for ways to be able to connect and to see people and to smile and have a good time and still get the work done. I was doing some training last week and we were on Microsoft Teams, which is a fine platform, but there were no cameras involved.
Oh,
And it was, for me as the extrovert, was very hard because we're trying to establish this. Whereas what I have found, because a friend of mine said to me, I can't get my team to turn their cameras on. And I always say to folks, this is a no judgment zone. I don't care if you have a t-shirt and a ball cap on, as long as you have clothes on from the waist up, that's all I care about. We just want to see each other's faces. Don't even put any makeup on. Just show up. And because it's a way for us to at least see that, to see each other and establish that.
you said something very important, though. Humans need humans, and we read each other's faces, and we understand each other's experiences and stories based upon our eyes and all of these other signals. And without them, it's very uncomfortable. We don't quite know what's happening or how to be ourselves even. Am I right?
Yes, very much so. Because you're asking a question and you're looking to read people's faces, but there's nothing to read. And you're listening and sometimes if you don't get any sort of response, people try harder, which drives folks on the other end a little bit like, you need to stop. But really needing that connection, needing to be able to see each other's faces. I noticed it just going for a walk in my neighborhood. When you have your
Yes.
mask and your sunglasses on and you say hello, and people look at you not knowing, was that friendly? Are you trying to be
Yes.
nice? Are you, like, what's going on? So really having to be able to read each other when we're working in this remote work environment now is definitely a skill.
You said something important, though. I want to emphasize it's not just in the work environment, it's the mask.
Mhm.
You know, a mask bandit was a bad guy. And
Mm.
now
Yeah.
everybody's wearing masks, and we're supposed to be good guys. And I bought a mask that had plastic here so you could read my lips. I couldn't breathe. It's hard to wear. But the idea was that you can't see me smiling. So I'm beginning to read sounds and eyes. It's a real interesting time. So for the people who are watching us, CEOs, C-suites, executives, managers, they're all trying to lead in a new way. Some of the things that you're helping them do in the training programs that you're doing, what kinds of 3 or 4 or 5 things should they be thinking about that could help them sustain their leadership role in these very fast changing times? Your thoughts?
So one of the things I see people doing, in many ways, we're still very focused on got to get the task done, got to get the work done. This is really the time when you need to talk to your team and say, how are you doing? Like, really, how are you? Instead of, I think in the old training sessions, you would ask everybody to go around and introduce themselves. Honestly, I put everybody into a breakout room, 4 or 5 people. I just drop them into a breakout room and say, talk about how you are.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Just so that, because we don't need to go through everybody's names all the time in that sense, we'll see them on the screen. But people need the chance to say, actually, I feel really stressed right now, or I'm feeling okay at the moment,
Yep.
or I have apprehensions about this. So one of the things is really not, yes, we want to get the work done. Yes, that's important. But this, again, craving connection, being hardwired for that, we have to find ways to do this.
Yes, even if it's virtual, huh?
Very much so. I worked with a group yesterday morning that they're facilitating their training and doing school online. So they're going back, and I turned on. So the session was supposed to start at 9 o'clock. I turned on at 8:30 to check it out, and there were 44 people looking at me. Not because I was late, but because they were so excited to be on and to see their peeps, to see their colleagues, and just be able to say, "Hey, how are you, Andi? What's going on? How, what are we doing? We talk about this." And one of the things we talked about at the end was, yes, we are resilient. Yes, we will always get the work done. But what are we going to do to support each other moving forward?
Well, you know, this is important because the changes were coming before the pandemic. The fourth industrial revolution was coming. We were moving from an industrial market to a digital revolution. People were working remotely. I had a client who enabled all of his staff, accounting people, to work remotely if they chose to. Now they're all working remotely, and he's trying to get them back in the office. They're not so sure. It's interesting. So the changes were slowly coming, accelerated now. And I often say we went from managing hands to managing minds. And those are all changes because we have to manage with the brain in mind. And the brain is looking for certainty, autonomy, fairness, all kinds of things that will make us feel safe and knowing where we're going. So as we get to thinking through that virtual way of engaging, how do you get remote workers to, in fact, get things done without over or micromanaging them? Is there a new culture that's emerging?
Well, I want to go back to one of the things you just said, which was the idea of managing hands. Now we're managing minds. I think we're
Yes.
also managing spirits.
Oh, great
Right.
thought.
So we're managing people, and we always have to remember that. And so I may have great days, and may have days where I'm still a little stressed out. My neighbor across the street, she's lost 4 people to COVID.
Oh,
One of my church family lost her sister, and 2 days lost her mother. So
oh,
people are people. And so
that
they're
breaks my
always going to get,
heart.
yeah,
It just breaks, I
I see it.
feel it.
Yeah. And so we have to remember that we're managing people as well. We're managing spirits, we're managing souls, and that we have to have that connection. And I know that there are folks who still think, I don't want to get near that emotional intelligence part. It's still a little squishy. It's critical now. Because
Yes.
if I don't feel like you actually care about me, if I don't believe you care or I feel valued, I may not be working as productively as I could be. So having that ability to touch base with your people on your team and say, seriously, how are you? How are we doing? Those daily or every second day check-ins are critical.
In some ways, though, you said something important. The emotional intelligence muscle has to get really active now. And so
Mhm.
your EQ isn't an afterthought. It sounds like, and I love your idea of managing the spiritual part, because that's really what's now the gap. I can get the
Mhm.
job done, as you said, and
Yeah.
I can actually be on a Zoom session and see people and talk about how it feels. How do I share those feelings? And what? So you do a lot of training on EQ and
Mhm.
and on empathy and the things that good leaders focus on. Share with our listeners some of the things from EQ muscle that could be really powerful now.
Well, one of the things I always do, because, the old world, we would talk about going to hard or soft skills training. And I always say, life's not very soft if you don't have those skills. So let's stop calling them that.
I
We'll call them
agree.
technical and behavioral. And I like to have people talk about, who's a manager or a leader that you would love to work for again, and list the characteristics of this person. And then who's a person where, you'd probably rather rip the nails off your nail bed than go back to that person again. And when we start to look at the characteristics and create this wonderful list, there may be 100 terms on the page. 4 of them might be related to technical competency. The rest of them are all behavioral competency. So, developing that idea of empathy, actually talking to people, find out what's going on with them. When we're in person, one of the things I will say about helping people to develop empathy, even as a team, let's go volunteer at a soup kitchen. Let's, instead of having a holiday party, let's maybe spend some time where we donate our time to a food bank, or we'll do things together that way so that we as a team can appreciate, because, many of us are very blessed and we don't realize how blessed we are.
Yes.
So
Well,
being able to appreciate that and understand and really truly listen to people's stories.
and in the process, that is very important because the story is changing now.
Mhm.
And we create a reality by creating that story. And we only live and see the things that affirm it. That's how our brain works.
Right.
We're storytellers for a good reason. That's how we've evolved. And the secret of our success is in the sharing of those stories. Now, I don't know what story I should share, to whom I should share it, that I can trust that will echo back the right way, which means that the fundamental foundation of our culture is very fragile at the moment. And
Mhm.
so, and that is a real anxiety producing loss of trust, really important part of this. As you're
Well, that
working,
word you just used, right? The concept of trust is so critical. Leaders must understand that if you go back to Lencioni's work, that the most important part of this pyramid our relationship is built upon is trust.
yes,
Because if I don't trust you, then I'm not going to share. I'm not sure I'm going to share my really amazing idea. Or if I don't trust you, I may not tell you that that idea you're about to do is a little half baked and maybe it's not going to be successful. But because I don't trust the foundation of our relationship or that you care about me, I let you go.
now
Right.
this
And
is,
at the end of the day, the work suffers.
and this is important for understanding what your clients or customers are feeling.
Hmm.
And the way in which you're handling this is a reflection of, I'll call it your brand for the moment. But they're looking at how you're handling your staff and how your staff are talking to each other about how the company is, because
Hmm.
your whole integrity and trust is going to be predicated on bigger than the product or service you're offering, but how your employees are weathering the storm and how you are building different new relationships with them. Am I right?
Yes, I agree. Because if people choose to stay with you through this storm and beyond, that tells you that you've created a team or an environment where I feel valued. And we worked through this pandemic together. We made
Yes.
it into the next step together. I know people don't want to use the term the new normal. Let's talk about the current normal. This is the current reality. And I think that organizations have a wonderful opportunity to look at, these are the things that we were doing pre-COVID that were successful. And let's bring those forward. And these are the things we were doing, maybe weren't our best choices. Let's leave those behind.
Yes.
And what are the things that we've learned to do now? Let's capitalize on those. Almost let's exploit them. It's like doing our own personal SWOT.
I love it.
So what can we do to move forward?
Because what you're saying is important for people to hear. They're talking about post pandemic. I don't know what that is.
When
And
it is either.
they don't have a date or a time, which makes them uncomfortable. But you are living now. And it's a great time to rethink the things that were working really well and the things that you really wanted to change then, but nobody would let you. I had one client who said to me, I can finally do the things I've been trying to do for 3 years. And nobody's arguing with me finally. They're not saying you can't or you won't or it won't work. They're just letting me try and figure out what we will bring back and how and what we won't. But it's a good time for you to take stock of the whole ecosystem. What worked well for clients, what didn't, what was old, what could be new, how to use digital, AI, all kinds of stuff. You know, they say that by next year, it was predicted that 72% of people would be looking for chatbots, all kinds of AI kinds of solutions. Humans, less. Now, how are you going to use humans? It's an interesting time.
I
Wow.
still would rather pick up the phone. That's just me. I'm old school. That's the extrovert in me. I'd still rather pick up the phone and talk to the customers as opposed to the bot. But that's my style. But what I am learning, interesting, is that, for one of my clients, I did a lot of work emotional intelligence with her and her team. And I knew that this pandemic was going to be tough for her because of her style and her nature. And so I called her probably in early April and said, "How are you?" She said, "I hate this." But you're a more introverted preferences. I thought you'd be enjoying this, although I knew she wouldn't be. She said, "It's awful. There's all these people at my house. I can't get anything done. We're working slower and all this. I can't wait to bring everybody back to the office." And I
Oh.
said, "But if I'd had this conversation with you 6 months ago, you would have said, 'When are we going home?'" But we get there and we start to learn different things and go, "Oh, well, we are missing on that rapid fire engagement." Most of the leadership that I work with as executive coach, my coaching clients are saying what they're noticing is that the ability to get things done quickly is not there.
Yep.
Because I can't nip on over to your office, have a quick conversation, and then just pop back to mine. It's like, and we need a Zoom call, or I need my email answered. And so really, I think it's figuring out what is the balance of what we've learned and what we can do away with, but what we really need, and how are we going to work these communication issues out.
And what I love about what you're saying, though, is that maybe it's better. Maybe the rapid fire had gotten extreme. Maybe what we think we're missing wasn't really productive. It was just an illusion. It was something we were doing faster and faster and faster. Because I'm finding people who are getting things done because they've empowered their staff, who seem to be getting it done without a lot of micromanagement.
Mhm.
And it's not necessarily, you got to take stock of what's good and what's bad.
Right.
There's something, though, that I do want to make sure that we cover, and that's this new relationship between work and home. We used to worry about a blended life, about, where did I do what, relationships with partners, spouses, others, children. Everything has changed. Some perspective that the folks watching might want to think about, because going back to the old may not be so soon, and the new may not be working so well. Kinds of things you've been seeing.
So I think we talked about the blended approach. Now I think it's a blurred approach. The lines are just blurred. I mean, where
Yes.
does it begin and end? Now I live in Northern Virginia, so I will happily say that I don't miss being on the road, going back and forth to clients, or flying to Alabama, or different places that I would typically go for work. I do miss some of the fun trips, but being on the road all the time, I don't miss that. I am working very hard personally, and I've talked with clients about this as well, that I would often just bring my computer in front of the TV and keep working. But I'm working very hard that when I shut this down at 6 o'clock or 5:30 or whatever time it is, that I walk out of my office, close the door, grab a book, do something else. So
Yes.
trying to work with teams to get and say, like, look, what are the core hours that we can anticipate we'll all be online? And then the plus or minus two, if you want to work 9 to 5, I want to work 7 to 3. As long as we're all online from 9 to 3, that's fine. So, being able to find those arrangements for folks. Also, I mean, where's your workspace?
Yep.
I have clients where they have two full-time leadership people in leadership working from home, and then they've got 2 college kids and a high school senior in there. So you've got 5 people all working on laptops. So where do we find that space? I'm noticing local organizations are working. So like it's this one is a sports center out west of the in Loudoun County. They have created a partnership where if you want somewhere for your kids to go during the day, it's much cheaper than daycare, but they're creating those partnerships. So I'm seeing places around here create those, which are very helpful. Or being able to, where do I work in my space? What's my space? Where do I go? What's this? So, people are having more, I think, more dialogue.
And what I love is some of the creativity. I heard about three couples. They decided they would all become really quarantined from the
Right.
COVID. And then they hired an after school teacher to come in and teach all of their kids, six of them, in one house each day. And then the parents would all combine in the other houses to do their work.
Yeah.
And so the kids got education continued and people to play with, but they all remained quarantined away from others who could contaminate them. There has
Right.
to be some intentionality in the thinking, but they were really doing a great job for themselves and for the kids, not to have such a, because even the kids are getting disrupted. You
Oh,
know,
yeah.
it's a very, very interesting time.
I see that
Um,
happening where people creating like their own little bubbles.
yes,
So
pods of
me and
size.
these three families, I have a collective of friends, and we all very much are doing the same thing. We're all working from home. We're all masked up if we have to go to the grocery store.
Yep.
And we do get together, but we do it outdoors with our masks, our chairs. We've been watching Hamilton outside on the big screen at their house, but we've created this safe space.
Yes. Now, that
Yeah.
means that we can create all kinds of stuff. Humans are very innovative. And the most important thing for those of you who are watching us is that I hope that listening and hearing is giving you ideas. Because if nothing else, your brain, the research is lovely. The more ideas you have, the more likely you'll have big ones, and they come at the intersections. And
Yeah.
so the more you can talk to people and listen to people, share ideas, something will click for you. And for those who matter to you, remember, this is managing the minds, managing the spirit, beginning to really think through how to manage life for many people in different ways. And it's actually a time for great creativity. Humans have always been creative. It hasn't always been easy, right?
And I think not assuming that because you are the CEO, you're the leadership position, that you're the only one that has great ideas.
Yes.
So give opportunities for your teams to say, hey, so can you plan something for 2 weeks from now so that we can have a connection? I know some people were having Zoom calls, happy hours, that kind of thing, but they were doing a scavenger hunt, an indoor scavenger hunt. So you had to run around the house and get these things, and the person that had the most points, they sent them a Starbucks gift card, something like that. So letting people on your team say, here's what works for us. Here's what we need to do.
Yep.
Here's what we'd like to do. Because people that work for you are smart. They're competent. They're learning just like we're learning with them.
Yep. And they are full of creative ideas. The
Yes.
trick is listening and not feeling that you have to have the decisions. You said it so well. The leader and the manager in this new period is a different kind. They're empowering, they're enabling, they're educating, they're providing the skills and reskilling, they're connecting in different ways, and they're being really good at comfortable with the new and the unknown, which are not comfortable things for many people. And I can't tell you how many CEOs you and I have both worked with who are a little bit deer in the headlight, angry. They're victims, and it doesn't help anybody. And their folks are all going to figure out, in the absence of a strong leader, people will make one up. They will bond together. They will take charge. They aren't going to wander around waiting for somebody to help them figure out what to do. They
Right.
want you to succeed as much as you do. So it's a good time to bond in this way.
Well, go
Melissa.
back to the word facilitation, right? Go back to the word facilitate, which
Yes.
comes from the French facile, to make easy.
Yes.
So maybe your role is to facilitate this growth and not control the growth,
Yes.
right?
That's
So
right.
ask your people.
Well, and if you follow that, rather than command and control, we are going to be far more entrepreneurial and collaborative, and we'll get great results. But I'm not going to be telling you what to do. The autocrat is gone. We're now really enablers, facilitators. Melissa, this is so much fun. Tell the
Yeah.
folks about your book and yourself, and if they would like to know more about you, where they can learn.
So I spent a lot of time working with government spaces and corporate spaces. And I just one day said, if I could just teach people how not to act like a bleep at work, life would be so much simpler. So hence the story of Lou, the mid-level manager who, while she is technically proficient, she's behaviorally a bit of a disaster. So this is the coaching, this is the business parable and her story about how she works with her mentor to establish a much more effective team and to learn to raise her emotional intelligence. I use it often with leadership development classes. So a lot of work, I do a lot of work around emotional intelligence and full leadership development programs, just helping people to understand how do you can create this path, and how do you take the good that you come with and add other skills to it.
No.
So based in Northern Virginia, but as with everybody, there are post-COVID, kind of during COVID, there are these things called airplanes. So we get on them. Otherwise, do a lot of work on the virtual space right now. Today was the first time that I was actually in a classroom space with live human beings. I jokingly said last night I had to go figure out what I was going to put on, including heels, real clothes, all of it, not just the waist up. And had a great time. But but again, it's people are still figuring that space out. So do a lot of work on emotional intelligence leadership, and happy to work with people at all levels across the globe, work all around the world.
Just a quick, your website is?
Well, www.wisewaysconsulting.com. And you can reach me at info@wisewaysconsulting.com or melissa@wisewaysconsulting.com.
I've been so delighted to share your thoughts with folks. It's so much fun. I do think that this is a time for us to have some innovative ideas and thinking for fast changing times, because if you get this down, it'll change again. Whatever
Sure.
I'm going to say, we're not going back to a stable, steady, I know what I'm doing, this is the way we do it. If nothing else, build your agility, your anti-fragility, the kinds of ways you can transition and really become happy changing. We were always hired to help people change. They locked us up and hope I didn't came up. And they would say, oh, well, I hired you. That's enough. I said, no, we have to change. But
Right.
now, the crisis is here. Don't waste the crisis. It's a good time to learn how to do things in new ways. And quite frankly, you're not alone. You won't look like an outlier. If you do it really well, you'll be a leader. And that's what this is all about.
Yeah.
So thanks again. For those of you who joined us, thank you again. I'm Andi Simon from SimonAssociates.net. And you can read my book at andysimon.com. Find it on Amazon. I have a new book coming out in January 2021. It's called Rethink, Smashing the Myths of Women in Business. And it is all about how women are indeed transforming our culture and our world today, a little at a time. But it's been absolutely a wonderful experience to share Melissa Davies with you today. Thanks again. I'll say goodbye. Stay healthy, please, and smile. It helps everybody.